Last year I did a ride to neighbouring countries, Namibia, Botswana and Zimbabwe, and I've been asked a lot of questions about doing a trip in that direction. So I thought I'd quickly just do a bit of an overview summary of how I did my trip. First things first is make sure that you carry a copy of your registration papers and also notify your insurance company that you are travelling to those countries. I took a credit card, my passport, my registration documents, a copy of the letter that I had sent to the insurance and the reply that from them. I also took a map with, because if you in the middle of nowhere, you may need to see something and you're not necessarily going to have data or Wi-Fi. So my suggestion would be to take a map with. I also then decided to do a road trip, sort of. I've been travelling to Namibia for many years, gravel roads a lot, most of the time, because that's really where the most scenic places are to see in Namibia. This time I took my road bike and I decided to do some of the tar roads. And my first port of entry was going to be at Windhoek. There's also a border post that's not regularly used. So I made my way up to Port Nolloth and I found a well-priced accommodation at the Scotia Inn in Port Nolloth. And from there, the next morning I headed out to Windhoek. A border not well used because most people are going via Fields Drift. Anyway, the tar road was in fairly decent shape most of the way. Um, 80 k's to Port Nolloth. The road is nice, tar road, you'll see from some of my footage. It's patchy here and there, but I saw they're busy fixing it, so there was roadworks sort of where they were busy patching all the sections. A nice different road to ride instead of the N7 all the way up to Namibia. I'm going to be crossing the border now into Windhoek. Oh. Because this is a small border post and not on the main route, so to speak, the crossing was fairly simple and quick. People are generally friendly and accommodating, and obviously you've got to just make sure you got all the right paperwork there. Getting into Namibia was fairly a simple process. You have to pay your road fees and road taxes and insurance and whatever you, but you can pay it with a credit card as you cross into Namibia. And once I had crossed the border post, I headed for Windhoek, mainly to get a pay-as-you-go SIM card for my spare phone, which I had planned on using. So should I need some data or I need to make any phone calls, I had a spare phone with me, and it did help. You can get various packages there, but it was quite a simple process. It took me about 40 minutes to get organised once I'd got to Windhoek, and I was sorted and I was on my way in no time. At the onset of the trip, I had more or less an idea of the distances I was going to do. The thing, when you start traveling to these places like Namibia and Botswana, there's only so many places where you can stay in between the towns and the distances. So if you just look at a map and you can see more or less which town you're going to stay at. So I had already planned my trip in the sense that, okay, well, if I got to this town, these are the accommodation places that I'd be looking for. So I'd done a bit of internet searching back home about more or less the distance and the places that I would get to on my travels. In Namibia, the first place was Oranienmund, then after is Roshpino, and then Aus. Just a choice of how far you're going to get in your motorcycle, what kind of consumption. And I definitely recommend you need to be able to at least cover over 200 kilometers in terms of distance in terms of fuel capability. Most of the big towns have got fuel, so that's not a problem. This is a nice, beautiful, scenic section right next door to the Orange River. It is just breathtakingly beautiful to me. You've got this harsh desert landscape and then this green of the vegetation next door to the river. It's just beautiful for words.
The Orange River, when it came down in flood last year sometime, as it turns here, it literally came as high as the road. In fact, it covered this road. Can't believe how high it came up, and it took parts of the road away in the turn there. So that's what they're busy reclaiming the road now. This Orange River that starts in Lesotho on the Lesotho side of the Drakensberg mountain, believe it or not. And here a massive river gets joined by the Vaal River along the way. I have a fascination with Orange River. It's just so beautiful as it cuts its way through the desert here. South Africa that side, Namibia this side.
There's something about the vast desert landscape and the long straight roads in the middle of nowhere. It's just you and the motorcycle in this wide open spaces of the desert. It's just something special. And even though the roads may be straight and long, it's still great to be riding there. So I'm making my way out to Aus here, and finally get to Aus. This is a very small little town on the edges of the desert. From here you split to either Keetmanshoop or you can go to Lüderitz. I was on my way obviously up to Windhoek, so Keetmanshoop was my destination for the evening. Just they have like a little shop in Aus, and you can get some petrol here. And the nice thing about the petrol is it's a little bit cheaper than in South Africa, and for those that don't know, the currency is really Namibia dollar and the South African rand is 1 for 1. So I stopped to stretch my legs at a little biltong padstall on the side of the road, like a farm too, and had a nice chat with the uncle there. Really was a worthwhile stop. The biltong was great too, company nice. After the padstall, I eventually got to Keetmans and found one of the places that I had sort of researched prior to my trip, and I spent the night there.
I've got an early start this morning. I see my GPS shows that I've gained an hour. Obviously the time change in Namibia. Beautiful, quiet, but one long straight flat road. But I'm enjoying riding my motorcycle, which is what my whole ride was about. So 33 degrees, not as bad as yesterday, but it's been hovering around the 33 degree mark for most parts of the late morning, I would say. Yeah, having a nice ride. You can see, I mean, while I'm talking here, there's hardly any traffic coming through, so it's nice and peaceful here. Open roads, no wind. It's just beautiful. The road from Kettmans to Windhoek is fairly long and straight. I had a few options of where to stay, and luckily I found a nice one, well within my budget. It was 33 most of today, and then as I got closer to Windhoek, the temperature dropped. It's amazing how cool it can feel when you get to about 30 degrees, which it is about now, 29 maybe. It suddenly got a bit cloudy and there was a few drops of rain. But anything that drops the temperature is welcome. So stay here for tonight, and then tomorrow off to Swakop. This is the famous Joe's Beer House in Windhoek. It's obviously a big tourist destination. I hadn't been here for ages, so I thought, okay, well, let's go and have dinner at Joe's. And I took basically a ride through the city of Windhoek from my guest house to Joe's. Had a pleasant evening there, and then back again through Windhoek. Enjoying some of the sights of the city. Nice and clean place, I must add. And got back to my guest house eventually. Next day I was off to Swakopmund, which was my destination. I also had a few options of where I may stay here, and through the desert it was a beautiful day to Swakop. And it was on a Sunday, so I caught quite a bit of traffic coming in the opposite direction. Obviously people coming back from their coastal weekend. Take a rest day here and then just chill out before I head north. What a ride. I'm just going to relax in Swakop, and tomorrow I'm going to head north. So, very cool.
the time I got to Otjiwarongo, it was still fairly early, and I had actually initially intended to stay over here. But I then pushed on to Otavi, and at the garage there, I found a guy who told me about this little lodge just outside of the town of Otavi, and I made my way there. It was a well-priced little lodge, and I stayed there for the evening. It was absolutely a pleasure. So you tend to find these gems along the way. Not everything is pre-planned, and just a bit of common sense and logic, and inquiring with the friendly local people, and you find places like this. The next day I left for Rundu, and making my way up there via Grootfontein. It was just a beautiful setting. It's lovely to travel the roads that you seldom travel, so I really enjoyed the ride. It was a nice, cool morning to start the day. It's not a bad thing to carry a bit of extra water and stop frequently when you get a gap. Stretch your legs, rehydrate. These are all good things to do while traveling, especially traveling solo across the country. It was a long ride to Rundu. Fortunately, I had a few ideas of where to stay, and I ended up staying at the Kavango River Lodge, which was a fairly decent place. The food wasn't great, but the accommodation was fine and right on the banks of the river, so the location was fine for me for the night.
So that's the Okavango River.
Yeah.
And across the way is Angola.
Yeah.
It's nice and warm here,
Yes.
eh? Okavango River. So this is the Kavango River Lodge where I stayed last night. I'm now heading out to Katima Malilo this morning.
This is the Caprivi Strip. It's long and straight, and roughly around about 500 kilometers between Rundu and Katima Malilo. Fortunately, there are a few villages where you're able to get some fuel. You need to cover a distance of about 200 kilometers easily before you can get fuel in the next village.
This is Devundu. It's about 200 kilometers from Rundu. It's got petrol, brand new garage as you can see. There's a Shell down there, so petrol is definitely available in this town. 200 k's to Rundu, 320 k's to Katima. Yeah.
There's a lot of signs. It says be careful of the elephants while traveling through the Caprivi Strip, but I didn't see any on my ride. I've basically filled up at every opportunity that I got along the way, just to not take any chances in case maybe one of the villages were without fuel. And eventually I made my way through to Windhoek. Again, in the pre-planning stages, I knew I was going to be staying in Namibia for the evening, so I had already an idea where I was going to go and stay. And I headed for the Kololo Lodge, which I had seen previously.
Stopped by this incredibly beautiful and humongous baobab tree. It's so amazing to see all the greenery on them, and obviously had a lot of rain in this area. Absolutely beautiful. I'm heading out of Namibia to the border with Botswana. That's my plan for this morning. I've been to Namibia a number of times. It's still been another great experience. It just never disappoints. Easy to travel here. It's cheaper than South Africa fuel, and the people are friendly. The roads are good. Infrastructure is fine. I would do it any day again. So.
The border is not very far from Caprivi, and in no time I was across and through the border post in Namibia and on my way to the Botswana border post. On entering Botswana, they have a foot and mouth issue in the country, so you have to dip your shoes and ride through a solution of anti-foot and mouth disease liquid for safety's sake getting into the country. Getting into Botswana was a fairly pain-free experience. People are friendly. You're able to pay everything with a credit card as well here. All the insurance and the road fees, etc. I opted for a multiple entry permit for Botswana purely because I was going into Zimbabwe from Botswana and then back into Botswana to make my way down south to Gaborone eventually. I spotted some elephant in the trees, and I went to go and take a closer look without trying to disturb them. They were sort of moving away from this control point.
Welcome to Botswana.
Kasane is the main town up in the northern parts of Botswana, where you come through the Caprivi Game Reserve. You can draw money from the ATM in terms of pula. You can get fuel. Fuel's also a little bit cheaper than South Africa, although the exchange rate of pula to rands, it's 1 rand 30 to a pula. Getting into Zimbabwe is a little bit more time consuming than either Botswana or Namibia. Quite a process. They also use US dollar here, and they will take rands and pula, but at an exchange rate that's not going to be favorable for you. So my suggestion is that you either you should come prepared by having a few US dollars with you. I was able to pay with a card as well, so that's another alternative. You can also use one of the consultants. They have guys that will help you across the border at a small fee. I also opted for this option. It was less painstaking, but it still took me over an hour to get across the border. On arriving in Vic Falls, I found a reasonably priced place to stay. Also part of my pre-planning, I had a few options of which I anticipated. I took a rest day here and went to go and see Vic Falls, walk around the park and enjoy the waterfall. I highly recommended activity for me is the sunset cruise. It's about $50 US, and it's certainly worthwhile doing. Highly recommend it. The next day I sort of decided last minute to go down to Bulawayo and into Botswana that way instead of going backtracking to Kasane. It was probably a mistake, and I really wouldn't recommend this road because it was absolutely a bit of a nightmare in the sense that it was full of potholes. And what made it really disastrous was the fact that you could not really see the potholes in the shadows of the trees. So it made really for slow going all the way to Bulawayo.
This is Zimbabwe between Vic Falls and Bulawayo. Potholes of the off-road potholes. So I got stopped at a police check, and the cop asked me, "So how's Zimbabwe?" I said the roads are blocked, and he fucking nearly hosed himself. I see this truck coming here as well, riding off the side to avoid the potholes. It's actually hectic. So it's slow going for me, but I've got the whole day to get to Francistown and we'll put away a plum tree and then Francistown. But you can check, riding off-road, the roads are so bad, yeah.
So, considering it took over an hour for me to get into Zim, it was probably about a 15-minute exercise to leave the country. And I went out at Plumtree and into Botswana, just outside of Francistown, and I made my way to Francistown for the evening.
"36 degrees in Gabs." I just got in from Francistown, so it's at 2 o'clock already. Early, but after yesterday and last night I didn't get much sleep. Yesterday's ride was absolutely hectic. 300 k's of potholes, Bulawayo. So today was it's about 4:40 to Gaborone. City's expanded, beautiful new roads. No more circles, it's robots, but shitloads of traffic.
After leaving Botswana, I headed for Gauteng and spent some time with family before I ended up heading back home down the N1 to Cape Town. As usual, the trucks were chaotic along the way, but yeah, it was a wonderful experience having just traveled for the past 3 weeks to Namibia, Botswana, Zimbabwe, enjoying Vic Falls and the time on the Zambezi. It was just memories made. It was certainly a memorable trip. Over 7,000 kilometers I did in 3 weeks. What a ride.